This week, so happy to welcome on a friend of the show. He's currently the fourth highest ranked Canadian man. He's represented the country in Davis Cup on numerous occasions. He's also now broken the top 150 of the rankings in singles. He's also achieved a career high doubles ranking of 111. Liam Draxl, thanks for coming back on the show. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure being here. Always enjoy our talks. So yeah, just happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm catching you at what I would call one of the busiest times of the season, and I'm sure it's been really busy for you as we speak. I know you're back home now in Florida, but just coming off that experience, playing Wimbledon, qualifying for the first time in your career, maybe just obviously the results. I mean, you lost a tough three setter to a very experienced player, and we'll get into that, but. Maybe just reflect on the experience, getting to be just on the grounds at the All England Club and having that opportunity to play really the most prestigious tournament in the world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, not quite on the grounds. We play at a different site in Roehampton where the junior tournament
Okay, okay.
is held, but still it's definitely special. It's Wimbledon is just the pinnacle of tennis, so it's still super special, and playing on grass is so much fun, and it's just something you don't get to play on a lot. So I really enjoyed playing on the grass. I didn't get too much preparation, but I thought I did the best I could, and like you said, yeah, came against a tour veteran there, and had some chances, but just didn't go my way. But it was an incredible experience. It's probably my favorite Grand Slam.
Yeah, and going out to Tucson Live, it's for those wondering, the experienced veteran. You mentioned obviously, I was wondering leading into this match, how many matches would you have ever played in your life on grass courts? Is it a surface you ever had a chance to play on, say back in Canada growing up, or what was that prep like? How did you kind of get acclimatized to it and get used to the surface before obviously playing qualifying?
Yeah, I mean, I played on it in juniors. So it's been 6 years now. Yeah. It's been 6 years, and I wasn't able to play any lead up tournaments, but I was hitting a little bit on grass before I went over to London. I had some grass courts that I could hit on here in South Florida, so that was definitely good to just get adjusted to the surface. But yeah, I think it suits my game. Yeah, it suits my game decently well, and you know I can. I can mix it up with maybe some slice and some serve and volley and things like this. So, I definitely enjoy it, and hopefully win some matches on it in the years to come.
Yeah, I think the last time we spoke, which would have been last year, I know you had earlier kind of set the goal of just getting the opportunity to play in qualifying of Grand Slams. And that's obviously a process and one of those stepping stones and something you finally broke through to do in 2025. And we saw you competing in French Open qualifying, now Wimbledon qualifying. Just how satisfied are you with the results and the recent progress you've made? Obviously, seen the ranking go up into the top 150, and now getting to compete at the biggest events in the world.
For sure, for sure. I think so much of it is just timing and some confidence, and you win some close matches. You get some bounces that go your way, and you go deep in one tournament, and then you can just kind of keep the ball rolling. And I think that's kind of what I did. I ended last year winning a lot of matches, and I just kept the ball rolling. I felt like since after that, I always feel like I try to do the right things and work hard, and I always try to compete hard in the matches I play. So, I just try to lay it all out there, and um sometimes you just got to ride the wave a little bit in this sport. You can lose so many matches, but when you find yourself winning some, you just gotta keep playing, keep it rolling. So I think that's what I've been able to do. And yeah, and obviously it's been amazing that rankings jumped probably like, around 100 spots, since the start of the year, something like that. So, I'm super blessed, super grateful that I could get into this range where start playing Grand Slams, and I can even like sneak into some ATP qualifying now. Because I was kind of right on the cusp all year last year. I was like 250 to 300, for all of last year. So I was so close to breaking in, but just not quite. So it definitely feels a little sweeter, breaking in now, because I was so close for like a full year, and had some chances to make it, and I didn't make it. So now that I'm kind of in this range, it's I'm definitely enjoying it.
Yeah, you said lay it all out there, and that's I think probably the sentiment I would say to describe you as a player, as someone who, when I watch you, you're someone who loves to compete, and I think that's your identity as a player. I don't know if you'd agree with that. How do you always consistently summon that energy to bring kind of that competitive fire when you are, out there week after week after week, and it is a long physical grind, the number of matches you're playing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I definitely would agree. That's probably my biggest strength, is just competing. But like you said, it's definitely not easy. Sometimes you're tired, sometimes you're sore, sometimes you're a little injured, you're a little sick. These things can definitely happen, when you're just on the road so much. And it's the same for everybody on the tour. So, yeah, I think when you're playing, a lot of tennis in the year on the tour, I think the weeks that kind of the matter and count is when you're not feeling 100%, when you're a little sick, or when you're a little injured, and you're really just not feeling it. And you know, that's when you have to really push yourself, and try to make the most out of it. And you know, even you win a couple rounds, or whatever, you just feel like you maximized each week. I think that's all you can really ask for. So I think it's somewhat easy to compete hard, and feel good and stay positive, maybe on the more glamorous weeks, and when you're feeling really good and you're fresh. But it's the weeks that you're hurting a bit, or you're lacking a little motivation. That's when you really need to push, and to make it count, because every week counts. Every week's a new opportunity. And I feel like you just need to make the most out of what you have that given week.
You had a great few years, obviously competing in college tennis for Kentucky, different environment, and now going through that time in 2024, fighting to get your ranking up. What is just more experience? Playing challengers, getting into ATP events. What has that sort of taught you about what it takes to make it as a professional?
A lot of it is experience, and a lot of it is mental. And honestly, I don't even really know how to describe experience. I definitely felt like, let's say last year, if I was gonna make like a semifinal or final or something like this, I'd be like, wow, that's like it's an incredible week. But I've been fortunate enough to get on those runs a few times, this year already. And I just feel like, yeah, the biggest difference for me, I don't know, you just kind of you've settled into the challenger level. And I'm in the ranking range where you're maybe seated in the draws. So, you're playing lower ranked players up until the quarters or something like that. So it's a little more favorable to kind of, make it to the quarters. And then, just off of your experience, it's the same for any player at any level. I've won, a couple of quarterfinal matches. I've won a couple of semifinal matches. It doesn't feel like it's that big of a deal for me anymore. Obviously, I get nervous. Obviously, there are a bunch of points on the line. It is a big deal. But I don't know. It's just your mentality, knowing that you've been there before. I think that's just what experience, gives you. And I felt like, yeah, I've definitely had a good amount of, at least on the Challenger Tour, a lot of experience, and a good amount of match wins. So you're a little more comfortable serving matches out, and you're not stressing as much, and you've been there before, you've gotten over the line before, so it just gives you that kind of reassurance that you can do it again, so I think that's the biggest difference for me, this year rather than last year.
Yeah, and look, I think the results speak for themselves. Obviously, reaching four singles challenger finals, and you mentioned kind of knocking on the door, getting those opportunities, not just at the slams and qualifying, but getting yourself into a couple more ATP qualifying draws and seeing the competition there. And I wonder for you, is that a little bit sort of the same idea? Do you feel like I just need to be in a few more of these to realize what it takes? Do you see a big difference in level when you're jumping into, say, an ATP 250 or 500 and facing some top 100 guys?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like, the level isn't that different, but at the same time, you can feel like that it's a level up, like when I played Lajovic, it's a level up from what I'm used to playing. It
Mhm.
takes a whole lot more to win points, and to yeah, just to win points, to win the big points. It takes a whole lot more. It's against a player like him, it's not good enough to just stay solid and grind from the baseline and win that way. I went down 3-1 in the first set, and I'm like, this guy doesn't miss, literally doesn't miss a ball. Like, it's incredible. He's so clean. He's not missing a ball. Like, it when you play that level, it's like there's no choice but to absolutely go for it. Like, you have to go and win your points. You have to go take your chances when you have, a break point or a big game point. You have to go for it, because they're just simply too good. You leave it a little short, or you just get a little passive. They're too good. They're gonna hit you off the court. It's just, they're just really good at tennis. So I think, yeah, it's just those experiences. And I don't know, I feel like I've been a player that can adapt, and I think a lot of other players do. So I think it's more of just like a adaption, to just keep reaching, hopefully the next milestone for me, which is more the ATP Tour, when you're just playing guys like Lajovic, who are,
Mhm.
on the tour their whole life, for this guy, like, for over a decade. And it just you just know what you have to do. I think it's pretty simple when you're playing the match. You're like, well, I can't sit back on the baseline today and just rally and be, super tough. That's not good enough to win. So it's, you have to just make the choice in your mind. Okay, I'm gonna have to, take some chances. I might miss a couple more balls today, but I have to do it. You have to go for those big serves. You have to go for those, big forehands. When you gotta rip it. You gotta rip, that ball when it comes. So I think it's those tactical decisions out of necessity when you're just playing higher levels. So I think, you just keep playing higher levels, and you keep adjusting your game to what needs to be done out there to try to find W's.
Yeah, playing afraid just is not an option, I gather.
No, no, it's not. I think, at the level I'm at, maybe, you still can win some matches for sure, just grinding it out, being super tough. Maybe if you catch, a top 100 guy on a bad day, maybe it will work. But, you're playing 30 weeks a year, and for you to, the goal is obviously to, be inside the top 100. Yeah, you gotta go for it.
Have you gotten, more of those experiences, maybe getting to train with some of these, top 50, top 100 guys, especially now that you've seen your ranking go up, you've kind of made your presence known on the circuit as a solid, capable singles and doubles player?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so many players around this area in South Florida. Before I went to Wimbledon, I hit with Tommy Paul. That was obviously a great experience to practice with him. For sure, there's a bunch of players, around, and I have gotten to practice with players. And yeah, it's just great to feel like their ball quality off the baseline, and their power and everything. It's because I feel like, yeah, when you just kind of test yourself on the higher level, again, you're going to adjust to that playing of that speed and that power, and you're going to have to match it. And if you don't match it, you're just you're not good enough, and you're not gonna compete and win. So I think, yeah, it's definitely it's great to play with better players to challenge you, but I think a lot of people get it twisted at the same time though. You still have to play people that are worse than you, and you have
Mhm.
to, learn how to win. You have to learn how to win ugly, that that's probably more important than getting your cracks at, really good players and things like that, so you have to pay your dues, I think, winning, maybe below your level, whatever that level is for you, and then, you can take your cracks, on at people better than you, and see what you got,
Yeah, that's kind of the tennis question. Is it easier to play up than to play down? And I know maybe you could speak to this, but I find some junior players when they're playing someone they know is better, they are so relaxed and loose and let it fly. And when they're playing someone who maybe they're slightly better than, they start feeling the pressure.
For sure. I definitely think, yeah, I think my dad has an expression, the easiest thing to do in tennis is to play well and lose, and I think it's so true.
Mm,
It's somewhat easy, to lose to a good player 4-4, and it's somewhat easy to go, 3 sets with a player, at the end of the day in all sports, it's all about winning, and, so there's definitely I think it's I think they're both challenging, to beat somebody worse than you or just below you. That's a challenge and that's a great skill to have. But then again, for you to play well against a better player and, take games or even a set off and think you're there, you know, for sure there's positives you can take after that. But, at the end of the day, I feel like you have to be honest with yourself and be like, like I lost like 6 love in the third. I wasn't really
mhm.
close at the end of the day, or I wasn't that close to closing them out. I'm still not there. I don't have the experience. I don't have the confidence to close it out. So I think, the challenge of actually getting a big win is it's tough to get over the finish line in sports. So I think both qualities are challenging for their own in their own way.
I mentioned Kentucky, and obviously your colleague Gabriel Diallo just continues to put up such great success. Recently, winning the first title of his career, winning a match at the French Open, getting inside the top 50. Are you still in touch with Gab here and there? And it's just what do you make of his rise? And when you see that happening, are you privy to maybe picking his brain on how he's been able to make such a leap and such a step up, in level and ranking?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, it's been incredible what Gab's doing. He's been backing it up on every surface, which is super, impressive. And he's winning so many matches, and he's had so many good wins. Like obviously, like the grass court title, but even beating great clay players like Sarandolo, like in a 3 out of 5. That's
Mhm.
so impressive to me. Like just these things, he's kind of cracking into new milestones. Feels like every week almost, so it's been great. And yeah, we're still in touch, I saw him at the French there in Paris, and we talked and everything, and it's great. Yeah, I'm so happy for him. He's one of my teammates, one of my good friends, and it's awesome, and it's great to talk to Gab now, like, in these top 50 in the world, and we're still talking like we're still, playing college tennis. He hasn't changed one bit, and he's still, just a great guy. And yeah, for sure, it's definitely would be beneficial to pick his brain, but I think he's, just from looking on the outside of his game, it's just I feel like he's always been a good worker, and he's always just he's been looking to improve, his game. Everyone has weaknesses in their games, and I think he's gone ahead and attacked that. Like one part of his game that's improved tremendously is his volleys. And he's always just been trying to add layers to his game. Yeah, he's a tall guy with a big serve, but plenty of more layers to his game than just his big serve, you know. So it's been impressive to see, you know. I think he's always been just such a workhorse, and he's always been kind of, you know, working on his process and his game to improve. And you know, that's what I've seen from Gab, you know, over these, you know, 5 years per se, that he's always been looking to get better, and he's always had such a great attitude on his game and his perspective of how he needs to get to the next level. So, you know, I have a lot of respect, you know, for that. You know, it really sounds so cliche, but it really is kind of as simple as trusting the process and trying to just get better, you know, a little bit better each and every day.
Yeah, those are really great compliments. I want to touch on your game, obviously, and I think you are someone who has a similar mentality because probably, and maybe you'll agree or disagree. I would say 2, 3 years ago, you probably have the identity of someone who's a grinder
Mm,
and someone who's gonna outlast someone, yeah, from the back. And
for
I think
sure.
you won a lot of college matches that way too.
Yeah.
And you've spoken about needing to add more offense to your game, getting a
Yeah.
more potent serve, closing to net. Has that been kind of the approach to getting better for you, adding more offense to your tennis, and what have you really worked on to add to your tennis?
For sure. You know, you know, we said, you know, I definitely like to compete out there. And um, you know, I think I am I try to improve my game, because when you play the matches, it's, you know, so obvious in what you need to improve on. And you know, you'll lose matches, and it's just, you know, the light bulb will go off. You're like, man, you know, I didn't hit my first serve in the big moments, or man, you know, I didn't hit through the ball enough on the big points, something like this, you know. So I think it's been quite obvious to what you improve to what you want to improve on when you play so many tournaments, so many matches, and you know, everybody's losing like every week pretty much. Yeah, for sure, every week. And so I think it's just kind of eye-opening and obvious, you know, when you lose, you know, oh man, I messed up in this area, or I need to get this better. And you know, you look at the stats in your match, you know, I got to win more points on my second serve. You know, that's so important. So it's I think it's kind of just you know, I don't know, at least this is the way I think. It's just from playing so many tournaments, you can learn so much, you know, just from how your matches go. Because there's when you play 30 weeks, there's probably going to be a similar pattern per se when you lose a match. You know, so I think it's been just kind of obvious in a way what I need to improve. You know, I need to improve my second serve. I need to, you know, try to play more aggressive, especially on the big points. You know, I need to, you know, just commit on my ground strokes. And you know, it's, you know, I definitely probably am always gonna have that reputation of being a grinder and physical player from the baseline and things like this. You know, I don't think that's ever gonna leave me, but you know, for sure I need to, you know, come in and finish at the net and do these things as well, you know. So I think it's just, yeah, just adding, you know, that little bit of offense, you know, because it's if you want to try to do it all from the baseline and grinding, you're in for a long career, you know. So just trying to get those free points, those big shots when I can, it's you know, it's definitely beneficial. So, you know, these are the things I've been working on, and I think it's definitely been better this year. And it's like I said, it's just a process. You just got to keep going, you know.
We talked about the ranking going up, obviously now inside the 150. Um, Financial rigors of the tour are discussed a lot, I think, for players who are outside of the top 100, top 150, and kind of fighting to stay alive, continue their career if they're in that 200, 300, 400 range, and so on. Did you feel that at all early on in your career? And did you ever feel any of that sort of financial pressure? I don't know if that still exists, because obviously this is really one of the hardest sports in the world to properly make it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's tough. Yeah, for sure. It's tough. You know, it's tough to make a living. You know, you know, I'm definitely not making any living at 150 in the world. You know, yeah, I think I'm I'm at least not losing a bunch of money anymore. So that's a positive, you know. I think I had, some of those doubts early on in my career, just after college, when it was just so uncertain, when you have to go through the futures and the challenges and the challengers, and it seems like it's such an uphill, battle, but I believe that, God has a plan for my life, and I try to trust his timing with everything. So I'm just trying to take care of what I can do that's in my control. I try to do my best, and whatever happens happens, man. So I just try to look at it like that.
No, that's a good perspective. Going through the kind of futures to challengers, did you come across like some of these, very good talented players who kind of hung up the racket for that reason, for money?
Um yeah, for sure. For sure, and yeah, yep. Yeah, I definitely saw it for sure. I've seen it, a lot, especially, yeah. I think I've seen a lot of really good college tennis players not kind of pursue a career because they have that, university degree, they have a solid degree, and they can guarantee themselves, a good living, and if they want to settle down, marry, have a family, stuff like this, like it's definitely more of a safer route, and I don't blame them for doing that, So yeah, for sure, I've definitely seen a bunch of talented players, coming out of college that definitely don't want to, y- you know, um, fully put all their eggs in the pro tennis basket, because it's definitely uncertain of what kind of living this is going to look like for you, and when you have that you know that other guaranteed route of whatever career path they're gonna go for through their university degree. It's definitely an understandable decision from those people, from those players.
Yeah, a few more from me as we get into the summer, back training in South Florida. Just tell us a little bit about your calendar, what it looks like for the next couple months, and maybe where the National Bank Open lands on a list of priorities. Do you hope to play there?
I mean, yeah, for sure. And from growing up in Newmarket, a suburb of Toronto, it's in Toronto this year. It's I mean, grand slams are obviously a privilege, but this is the one circled on the in the calendar year for sure. I've played well. I played Toronto twice, and I've played well both times. So it's nice. I have good memories. I've played some good matches in Toronto before, so I'm definitely just so looking forward to, just going forward, and trying to, just enjoy that, those are the moments that you work hard for. I remember, going to that tournament as a little kid, and just dreaming that one day I could play at that tournament, and I've been so blessed to play this tournament a couple times now, and so it's the dream tournament for me, so that's that's probably priority number one.
Nice.
But yeah, and it's great. I'm gonna play the win. Well, I'm going to Cary next week to play Challenger, and then it's gonna be great. I'm gonna go to Winnipeg, play the Challenger there, then in Granby, the Challenger there, and then play Toronto. So it's amazing to play in Canada. I've had great memories in Canada. I've I've done well in Canada, on home soil, which
Hmm.
is amazing, because I feel like you can't really control when you're gonna title, so it's just a bonus if it's on home soil, so I'm definitely looking forward to playing, on home soil, and trying to play my best, play well, and I'm just super pumped, for those tournaments, and then obviously, at the end of the summer, it's US Open, which is going to be a good one too. So, I'm definitely really excited for the summer hard courts in Canada and the States.
Yeah, you're gonna get an amazing Canadian swing. I want to ask you last question here. You talked about the experience playing someone like Dusan Lajovic doesn't miss a ball. The level we saw, I want to ask some pro players about this level we saw in the French Open final between Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner. Did you have a chance to sit down
I did.
and watch that spectacle? And what do you make of the tennis these guys are playing?
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's truly unbelievable, because what impresses me is like, they've already played so much tennis on clay and, uh, I would assume that they're not feeling like fresh as a daisy, and they're still playing that level and they're still that fresh after 5.5 hours when they've played, full 2 weeks of a grand slam with the pressure and all the expectations. I don't know how that feels. Like I can only imagine how that feels. So I think, the level they played, I mean, it's almost like indescribable. They're hitting the ball so hard. It's every point is just like unbelievable highlights, like I don't even watch that much tennis, but for that one on the TV, I was just glued to the TV watching that insane level. And what was so impressive to me is just kind of Alcaraz's, physicality, it was incredible. I don't really understand it. It's crazy after 5 hours, he's still running down every single ball. He's still, he looks fresh as a daisy, which is like incredible. Maybe Sinner looked a little more fatigued than Alcaraz, but still both of them, it's incredible. The ball speed is incredible, and just, I think Alcaraz's physicality and athleticism is incredible, and that they're able to push that much, especially when it's the final. It's not like a first round or just like whatever. It's they're 2 weeks in playing on red clay. They're definitely sore. Their bodies are a little banged up. Like they're definitely not feeling 100%, and they're still able to play that level and to go for that long. It's insane. I mean, it's insane.
Have you ever played anything close to 5 hours in a match before?
No, no, no. No, the only thing I could probably, and that's not even relating, but just a lot of tennis is probably when you have a good week in singles and doubles. That can be
Mm.
a lot of times, a lot of hours on court in the week, especially if I've played a lot of matches, say, like, in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and some futures, just grinding and grinding so hard, singles and doubles, and it's so hot, and you're playing, 3, 4 hours a day, that's challenging, for me. So I think that's probably the, heaviest load of tennis I play in a tournament, is when you're playing, you make it all the way singles and doubles.
Last one for you. Are we gonna get a rematch here at Wimbledon? Any predictions? Sinner Alcaraz rematch in the final, and who do you think is taking the title?
Man, who's taking the title? I'm gonna go Alcaraz. I think he's just he's on a lot of confidence. He's on a little match winning streak right now. So, I think he's won Wimbledon before. I think he's got the touch, the power. He's got all the shots for grass. He's got the movement, which is definitely one of the biggest pieces for grass court tennis, I think. So I'm gonna go with Carlos.
All right, that's a great pick. We're gonna go and root for you when you're here in Toronto at the National Bank Open. Can't wait to watch you then, and I hope Canadian fans get to see you as well when you're in Winnipeg and when you're in Granby. It's always awesome when you stop by on the podcast. Liam, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, no, so much fun to talk here with you, Ben. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on the podcast. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. You've been listening to Matchpoint Canada. We will talk to you next time. Thank you guys so much for watching us at Matchpoint Canada. If you like our work, follow along, hit the subscribe button below.